where you're watching from. Whether you're joining us on the live or the replay, we want to know. Tonight, we are so happy to have Devin Ashby with us here. He's from Family Search. What is your role at Family Search, Devin?
Oh, hey, thank you. Happy to be here, Sydney. So at Family Search, I'm what's called a global outreach manager, which means I try to help do marketing around the world. And most of my work now is focused on Latin America. So I try to figure out how we can do marketing there and how we can build new channels and do be a little bit smarter with things like WhatsApp. So that's a little bit about what I do there. So it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. And where are you joining us from?
I am in Salt Lake City, Utah, originally from Arizona, but in Salt Lake City, working from home, like I think a lot of people are. So it's been
Yeah.
it's been great.
Yeah, all the unity and working from home.
That's right.
It's fun when I hear your family in the background or you get a phone call. It's just a reminder of how we are all kind of the same
Yeah,
as we go through
cool to
this
see
together.
sides of coworkers that you don't usually see. Like I actually think it's fun when kids come in, and a lot of times when I, invite the kids over to the camera, they say, "Okay, Dad, Spanish or English?" Because a lot of calls I have are in Spanish. So, anyways,
Oh,
it's
that's
it's it's
funny.
fun to see that side of coworkers, and it's a good thing. I really like it.
Yeah, it's fun. My dog has made some like guest appearances in all my classes that I'm taking right now. So yeah,
Awesome.
it's a hit. And then you have been with the team from the beginning. Why don't you tell us about how you became involved with this experiment?
Yeah, sure. So I'm trying to think to the first day. This is weeks ago, but I remember Olivia, reached out and gave me a call and said, "Hey, Devin, I've been thinking about this idea and I really want to do something." And I had done a webinar earlier this year for Legacy Family Tree where was called The Science of Family History, and it looked a lot at how family stories can help with things like mental health and anxiety and depression. And we talked a little bit about that. And she said, "I want to do this push, this event, something, and get a bunch of people involved. And I just want to help people make family connections." What really excited me was she said, "We're all in quarantine and we kind of all live in the same thing. And what we need, maybe more so now than ever before, is family connection." And so that got me really excited. And she had mentioned a couple of other people helping, and it sounded like user generated content, which was really exciting. And
Yeah.
now looking back, where there was like nothing, at least as far as the experiment goes, wow, a lot's come together pretty quickly. And so anyways, it's been fun to see it grow, fun to see it be shared. And yeah, there's something here now, and there's a community around it, which is really fun to see.
Yeah, it's so cool to see the community that's come together. Not only are we making connections with our family, but we're also making connections with just anyone that we come in contact with who's involved with this experiment.
Totally.
And what you bring up about your interest in the project, which is the benefits of family history, is exactly what we're going to be covering today in this interview. Devin's going to take us through some of the resources and research that's been done on this, and what we can learn from it as to how family history and connecting with your family in general benefits an individual. So why don't you take us through the evidence tab that you have put together, help us put together for this experiment.
Sure. Let's share my screen. Okay.
Here we go.
Can everybody see that okay?
They should be able to see it now. There we go.
Wonderful. Okay. So here's the website, connections-experiment.com. And once again, doesn't have a lot of time live, but the time that it's had has been a good thing. And, Sydney, as we think about this, we look back on, how it was built. I'm really glad that we made the decision to build a website because I think social media is really, really great. And a lot of people can interact there, but it's good to have kind of a content hub or a place where a lot of people can come, regardless of who they are, and connect and get ideas. And so on the home tab, I think we've are familiar with that, and there's some great things here. But this evidence tab is what I want to talk a little bit about. And I think the important thing I want to say is that it's something that we hope that'll grow, right? There
Hmm.
is a lot of stuff on the internet and a lot of stuff that's talking about connections, but a lot of it's in bits and pieces all over the place. And so when we wrote this and we designed this, we wanted to be sure that people felt like they could leave something that maybe we left out unintentionally. And so I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think the important thing here is, you know, if we were to say there's just an abundance of evidence, I don't know that's true, but there's a lot of research that's starting to substantiate, you know, family connection with stories can help with stress, anxiety, depression, and help people find healing. And so these links and resources are just some ideas, and I'll share a couple of them, uh, a couple of links here, but please tell us again if there's some stuff that we may have missed and help it grow. So these
Yes,
first
please
couple
add
of
a
links,
comment if you
yeah, please
add
add
a
a comment.
comment if you
Yeah,
find
we,
anything that you think we should add.
yeah, add it, and we'll try to throw it up here. So these first couple of links are really really good ones. They're all TED Talks, and in the webinar I mentioned earlier, I was just really really impressed with Dolph Lundgren's uh, TED Talk here. I'll just open it so that we can see it really quickly. But this is a really powerful TED Talk, and this is Dolph. You may recognize him from Rocky Four, right? He fights Rocky in the fourth movie. So I thought he was Russian because that's what the movie told me, but he's actually Swiss. And it's really interesting. He titled this On Healing and Forgiveness, and it has a little over 2 million views. But what he describes in this is growing up in Sweden, and there was some abuse in the home, right? His dad was abusive, and that was very difficult for him. And he goes into some detail, but he uses a phrase I think that's really important. He says, you know, growing up in this situation, I struggled to deal with it, and a part of me froze. And that part that froze was something that actually stayed frozen for actually a lot of years. And he, you know, moving forward, he ends up leaving Sweden. He comes to the United States. He gets into acting. He has marriage. He has some daughters. Well, his marriage ends up kind of falling apart, and he gets some help with some professional. He gets some professional help, and he talks a little bit about what has happened and what he's experienced. And part of that, you know, story from his childhood starts out, and he says that he starts to thaw. And so I think that's really interesting, because a lot of that I think is really in us, right? There's things that happen in our families and things that, you know, are buried in the generations, and things that people don't necessarily want to talk about because they're difficult or because
Right.
they're hard. And he brings it up, you know, in a personal way, but he talks, I won't spoil the end, but he talks at the end about how this help uh, got him into a place where he could thaw. And the end of it's just a really really moving, really powerful story. And so part of the connections, I think, and some of the research I'll talk about in a minute substantiates this, but healing and forgiveness is found in the family story.
Hmm.
And the more that we can be comfortable with sharing that, not like throwing it all over the internet, but sharing it in this case with some professional help or with a family member or spouse, can actually bring the healing that's so needed for so many of
Yeah.
us. So just a really interesting video there. There's another lady, Dr. Landau, who talks about family stories, secrets, and survival. She looks at you know, alcoholism across generations. It's really fascinating. Then Sammy does another one as well. So those are some ones on healing and forgiveness. Um, I won't talk about all the ones under family connections, but I do want to mention uh, you. Everyone should go watch the IKEA commercial, because IKEA isn't necessarily, I think, a brand a lot of people would associate with family connections, but the way they build this, it's a Christmas advertisement in 2018, and they talk about, they do this game. It's really cool, where a lot of people are around a table, and so you can just get the idea here. But there's all these families that are around tables, and the game is, if you can answer the question, you get it right, you stay at the table. If you get it wrong, you have to leave. So all the questions at the beginning are like, how did these famous people meet? And what has Instagram incorporated recently? And they're all kind of like celebrity, social media type questions. And everybody's getting
Yeah.
them, right? There's a Twitter question, he gets it. And then he actually the narrator actually asks family questions, and people don't know him, and they all end up leaving the tables. And there's one guy left at the very end, and they ask him how he feels. He's like, I felt really bad when nobody knew anything about me. And the whole point is, connect with those that are around us. And obviously, they're doing it on IKEA tables, but this is a great no-tech solution. Most people still have dinner, at least I think most people still have dinner. But instead of, knowing what's all over the media, how well do we know our own families, right?
Right.
And so that's a really fun advertisement. It's only three minutes long, but that's a really good one.
Yeah. A quick thought I want to share on that.
Yeah, sure.
Like I watched that after your recommendation. It is in Spanish, but what's so cool? Well, I think it's Spanish. Is it?
Yeah. It's in Spain.
Okay.
So IKEA is a Swiss company. Funny enough, just like Dolph, it's Swiss, but they filmed this one in Spain. So yeah.
Yeah. And what's so cool about it is you can totally get the gist of the ad without knowing anything that they're saying.
Yeah.
And I'm an advertising major at my school. And so as a family history lover and an advertising lover, this is perfect mesh for me. And while we're pause for a second, we have a wonderful viewer, Joyce, who is joining us, and she was asking what website you're on. So Joyce, we are on the connections-experiment.com website, and then at a tab at the top is called evidence. So there's 3 tabs. I believe it's the one on the right there. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep.
Hopefully you can see what Devin is showing there, and that'll answer your question. Okay, back to whatever you were showing us, Devin.
Yeah, and Sydney, jump in anytime, for sure. Thanks for mentioning that. I just love seeing companies that are talking about family connections, because they do it in really great, innovative ways. So under family connections, this next one, Bruce Feiler, I could go on for an hour about this one, but I think this link right here, this New York Times article is one that that a lot of people might be familiar with. Bruce Feiler came actually to Salt Lake City a couple years ago and spoke at Roots Tech, which is a genealogy conference held in Salt Lake City next to the Family History Library. And he talked a lot about family connection and family narratives, really. And if you read this article, he'll go in and he credits a lot of the stuff which is right to some folks at Emory University that have been studying this for a long time. And he talks about this notion of like a business would create a mission statement, that families can actually create mission statements and use that to identify core values to them, right? And he talks about this family narrative, and he talks about the ascending narrative and the descending narrative. And then he says the one that's most important, from this research at Emory University, which is out in Georgia, is what they call the oscillating family narrative. And the oscillating one is the one that has the ups and the downs and everything else, right? He says successful families continue to reinvent themselves. And I really, really like that verbiage, because it's totally true, right? Mm-hmm. It's one thing to have a family, which is great. It's another thing to be like, hey, you know what? We had it all, and then we lost everything. Or, many of us, I think, in the United States can identify with immigrant ancestors who maybe left Europe or wherever, right? And came to the U.S., 100 years ago or whenever, and had literally nothing and worked very hard. I've got a friend who's from Peru, and his dad was first generation in his family in the States and worked very, very hard. And now he, as a next generation, enjoys a lot of the benefits of being here because of his dad's sacrifice. And so this oscillating narrative is one that we should make our kids familiar with and let them know of. There's another article on the site. I just wanted to go to Emory just really quickly, but this is Robin Five-ish, Marshall Duke, Jennifer Bonek, I think. This is just one of many, many out of Emory. And this talks about the power of family history and adolescent identity and well-being. And you can read this article, but this oscillating narrative there's a lot of truth behind it. And it makes me think of, maybe IKEA actually learned about some of these studies and built that ad, because this article is way back in 2010. Bruce Feiler did this piece in the New York Times in 2013. And in 2018 was the IKEA ad. So anyways, just a couple of examples here. Another one that's really great is this parade quiz So I think many of us might know that Parade's a magazine, but if you come in here and you actually click this, take our survey, and you can see they have Bruce Feiler here. And he talks about the secrets to happy families. You can just come in here. You don't have to sign in. You don't have to do anything. But they actually ask a series, I think, 21 questions. And this is a great one. When a team of psychologists measured children's resilience, they found that the kids who blank were best able to handle stress. I don't know, Sydney, what do you think it is?
Oh no. Well, did family history, right?
Family history.
Or
Okay, let's try it.
story? I don't know.
Let's try the family history. All right, continue. Correct. Right. So they'll give you the answer, but then they'll say, more children know about their family's history, the stronger their sense of control over their lives and higher their self-esteem. And then it goes in and gives some more detail there. But every question here has kind of references a study or an author. So it's really kind of cool. And we actually did this on Sunday and took I think we passed, it let us pass, but just some really good opportunities to have some family discussions around that. So anyways, let's see if I can get back here. I'm going to go just back to the website. And so anyways, you can, take this quiz at your own time. Let's see if I can get this to populate. Okay, again, we're just on the evidence tab here. So those are some examples under family connections. I'm not going to keep clicking on links, but there's several here under resilience. Martha Dreisnack has a really great article. A lot of times we hear, where are you from? Her question is, who are you from? She's a nurse, and she talks about using family connections as a practicing nurse. More stuff from Emory below that. This is actually an Adobe ad where Hurricane Harvey, there was a lot of water damages in a lot of homes in the South. And what happened is these students went in and used an Adobe Photoshop tool and restored family memories for people. And it's really, really kind of an emotional video on YouTube, but it's really great. Again, just kind of touching on this concept of connection, right? So there's that as well. There's a webinar, some religious links as well too. And then here at the bottom, this is the part I really wanted to make too, is come and we recognize these links, it isn't all inclusive. So if you have something you want to share that we missed, or something maybe you read a book on Amazon that would be good, send us a message, tell us about it, and we'll try to get it added. After this 21 days is over in May, we're going to keep building the pages and keep making this available.
Yes, thank you. Again, all the resources that Devin shared with us today are available on the evidence tab on our website, connections-experiment.com. Because I know Shelly was asking where the quiz is. You can find that in the list of evidence. And again, if we miss anything, if there's anything you think should be included, add that at the little message board down at the bottom. And then if you have a personal experience that you want to share about family connecting, please send that to us through an email. We would love to, as we gather qualitative data through this experiment, we would love to hear your experience. And also, it's just uplifting for our team to read.
Yes, please share. And share. It might be something that's very simple, right? I know a lot of people might be, intimidated from a lot of technology and a lot of links. If you have a conversation and you feel like you need to call, a son, or call your mom, and that's a connection that you make and you have a positive experience with that, tell us about it. That's a lot of fun. It can be a no-tech solution.
Yeah, it's been so fun hearing everyone's stories so far and creating my own. So that makes me wonder, what have you done, Devin, to connect with your family during this experiment?
Yeah, great question. So I mentioned we did the parade quiz as a family on Sunday, which was really fun. But one of the things when we talked a little bit about this, with our kids, I think it was a week or two ago, we had mentioned, how some of their ancestors had actually gone through some pretty difficult times, right? This concept of the oscillating narrative. And it's funny because before the 21-day challenge start, my dad just happened to send me a story from his mom, who died a number of years ago, but her family came over from Denmark to the United States years ago. And I didn't know this, but in at the end of World War II in 1945, my grandmother, my dad's mom, was valedictorian of her eighth grade class. I had no idea. So learning that was cool. But then my dad had said, hey, my mom, the eternal optimist, gave the valedictorian speech at her graduation in eighth grade. I thought you guys might want to read it. And I got a copy of it in Word, and I read it to my kids, and it was so cool to see their reaction, because I felt like their faces were kind of saying, well, this pandemic, yeah, it's no fun. We can't see our friends, but I don't know if it's like recovering from a world war, right?
Right.
And it was just a really cool conversation to have, because she wrote so much in there about, we have the future and we've got to take, care of it. And, I look to a future where we can rebuild. And it was just like amazing, because here we are in a pandemic of our own, but not quite like, fresh out of a world war. So that piece of family history, it helped us make a connection with a family member who's deceased. And most of my little kids, I've got a boy that just turned 6 and a 9-year-old. They didn't really know her, or they're too young to remember.
Mm-hmm.
And so we could have that conversation, share that story, and then just kind of let them know that their great grandma was an amazing person, and
Yeah.
and that's how she lived her life. And we can, and that's in who we are. That's part of our DNA, right? Is optimism and resilience.
I love that. Yeah, my grandpa passed away like 2 years ago. And one of the saddest things about it was I was like, oh, my future kids aren't going to know my grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm so grateful that so much of his life has been preserved as much as it was, so that I can still share, about him with them, because that is so important that they know.
Yeah, I know it's totally important that they know, and that they're real people. Like, they really lived, they had hopes and dreams and vision, just like we do. And they also had stuff that was tough, right? And hard things. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on here today. I know we've had lots of people who've been able to join us and participate in the comments. So thank you for everyone who joined us to watch. We so appreciate it, and we hope that you are enjoying the experiment. Again, we would love to hear your experiences if you want to comment or send us a message. And thank you again, Devin, for being here.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure. I would just say, keep connecting, right? This is for our families now, and for those that we know and love. It's also for, the family that's gone before, but we can make those connections. And, in some ways we're forced because of this pandemic into more digital interactions, and some of those can just be very, very sweet and meaningful. And we have ways to capture those conversations and record voices now that, we never dreamed of decades ago. So
Yeah,
it's right in front of us. So thank you. Happy connecting.
Yeah, thanks. All right, we're going to sign off. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on our next live. Our next live is on Friday with Wendy Smedley. She's at Over Marketing at Family Search, and trust me, you guys are going to love it. She has a lot of great things to share. So we'll see you Friday.
Okay, see ya.